The Las Vegas City Council approving more than $8 million for homeless assistance. Fox Eye's Mike Allen shows us how that money will be spent.
In one motion, the Las Vegas City Council approves about 6% of the $131 million given by the federal government as part of the American Rescue Plan. Exactly how that $8.2 million will be spent is overseen by the Director of Neighborhood Services, Kathy Thomas.
We navigate or help people navigate systems so they can get their birth certificates, their IDs. If they need connection to health care, we've got health care on site.
This new infusion of money will go toward things like employment services, temporary health care, and making more affordable housing out of what's already available. For example, one apartment complex is getting more than $140,000 to turn 10 of its units into transitional housing.
So what we'd like to see is more people who are experiencing homelessness get employed with living wage jobs and back on a path to living the life that they really want to live.
Thomas says there's always a need for more funding of those efforts.
We need significantly more so that we can scale up existing programs and also fill in some gaps.
Beyond government services, there's an organization working to reduce the homeless population in the valley in a different way.
We provide food, clothing, school supplies, hygiene products, all for free.
Kelly Christo directs Project 150, which, in addition to those services, gets kids who grew up in tough circumstances financially literate.
They show up to school every single day. They want to graduate. They want to be with their peers. They want a better life for themselves. And so they're willing to do whatever it takes despite those hardships.
The long-term goal is to make it so the next generation has the financial know-how to keep themselves off the streets.
If we tackle it now and give them the tools and the resources, we won't have such a high adult homeless population.
The city of Las Vegas has until the end of next year to spend its rescue plan money. Mike Allen, Fox 5 News, local Las Vegas.
A bill making its way through the state legislature wants to make it easier for the homeless to get IDs. AB 135 would give homeless people 30 days to provide the documents needed to obtain an ID and would also allow fees to be waived more than once for those under the age of 25. During a committee hearing today, lawmakers sounded off in support.
You know, if the government mandates you have an ID, which they do in just about everything. I mean, to get a COVID shot, you had to have an ID. So I think, you know, if an ID is required for anything, it should be, you know, it should be paid for. I've got a brother, you know, that's chronically homeless, should have an ID. I mean, that's your gateway to living life.
The bill would also require Clark and Washoe counties to submit a plan to address homelessness in their area during the 2023-2024 legislative term.